Welcome to Sigma Connectivity WSI. I'm not going to do a company presentation. Most of you know who we are and what we do. So we're more going to talk about the philosophy of building platforms, both hardware and software. So first, my name is Daniel, working with sales, and that gives me the opportunity to meet customers and listening to what they're doing and what kind of challenge they are up against and building products. And nowadays products are connected, meaning maintenance, and now comes directives of RED and so what, where firmware upgrades has to be implemented, giving a never-ending maintenance of products. So meeting customers, I said, I had the opportunity to meet 2 customers. I've been thinking a little extra regarding platforms and how they do generations of those, and out of that building products. So we have Husqvarna, Elias, he will present himself, and Jesper from Cross Control, who will talk a little bit about their experience and how they build things and pros and cons out of this mentality. It's more as a philosophy more than maybe is where you won't get any exact details of how things are done, but more important things of where you should be developing this. Finishing up then will Håkan be our system engineer, chief architect, and almost anything we can call him. And then after that, we have a little joint session where you can ask questions. I haven't asked Jesper, do you want questions during?
It's the third time I get that question, and yes, you are happy to interrupt me.
Yeah, so please interrupt him if you have questions during his speech, while Elias wants to have the question afterwards. And save them also until afterwards where you have all people gathered. So, with that said, I'm not going to say anything more. Elias?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we can lower the microphone a little bit. Like this is good. Can everyone hear me? And I will just switch here. Great. So, very happy to be here. My name is Elias Josefsson and I'm working at Husqvarna. But it's extra fun to be here in Kista actually, because I have been working here 5 years ago. I finished my employee here at Ericsson and actually lived also here in Kista. My current role is that I'm heading up system engineering and system test for the Pro Robotics organization in Husqvarna. And that's your right part here, the more professional movers that we have. But I have previously also worked within the more residential part here. So today I will not give you the final answer how you will develop your platforms, but I will share a little bit about my experience of both, especially within Husqvarna. But I have also previously with Ericsson and other experience previously worked in the early phase development, where the question of how do we build all these products that product management want us to do and the customer needs, how can we do that in an efficient way? So when I was thinking a little bit about some kind of title, you know the famous one ring to rule them all. It's not one platform to rule them all, because that could be, maybe some people think that a platform is just a big thing and everyone needs to adopt to that platform and so on. But for us, the philosophy is more like, okay, it's one platform to enable them all. And I will show you some examples that we have a lot of different customers with, and therefore also a lot of different products. And we have a platform that we would like to enable all of these product variants. But before we go into the details of the platform that we have right now, I really need to go back a little bit, because most of you maybe know Husqvarna. We usually say that we are one of the oldest startup companies in the world. As you know, we have been around for a couple of 100 years, making a lot of different products. But what I would like to focus on is obviously the robotic lawnmowers. Started off in the early 1990s, and it started off very, very small. So maybe some of you here that just are in the starting process of a new great business. It wasn't really great in 1995. But everything started off 1995 with the Generation 1. And my neighbor actually was one of the members in the development teams doing this. So I actually saw the first prototype in the garden next to us. And it didn't work very well. But after some years, you can see two of the movers. But in 2003, they have proved the basic concept of actually having an autonomous mover moving the lawn in a very good way. But then they need to take the next step of making it more kind of producible, high volumes, but still relatively low volumes. But around 2007, something happened in the market. And this is actually the curve that you can see down here. I don't have any figures and so, but this is the famous S-curve that all management students gets to learn about. This is how it should look like. But it actually did. So in 2007, something happened. And I would say it was the Generation 2 that actually was the first kind of generation that actually took off from a market perspective. Then G3 is the platform that out in the field is the most, its most volume out there is actually built on Generation 3. And this is a much more mature platform, enabling a lot of different variants and different brands. As you can see here, we have obviously the Husqvarna brand, but we also had Gardena, we have Electrolux, we have Flymo, and we have this 500 series that is targeting the professional movers. So this platform was really kind of maturing everything. And around 2017, Husqvarna had delivered approximately 1 million robotic movers to the market. And we are a couple of years ahead from that date. And I cannot say exactly, but we have a couple of millions up there now. And as you can see, it has pretty much been 8 years also to Generation 4. And I don't know if it's a coincidence or anything, or if it's some kind of natural law, but for robotic movers, there has approximately been like 8 years between the first launch of the next generation. So in 2019, 1 year after I started Husqvarna, the 4th generation movers were released. And it was this all-wheel drive mover. And there were some different drivers, I would say, that forced us to take this step. The new generation here is more of a distributed system. Before, everything was kind of built on one chip and one big board and so on. This is more a distributed architecture with a lot of different nodes, with CAN architecture. We had a new backend, a new communication system. The whole software were rewritten to be more modular, to enable both different type of products, but also enabling a much bigger organization. Because previously, maybe we had 1 or 2 software teams. Now we are 14 software teams that is working within one track software for a lot of different products. So just to give a glance of what we mean with this first title, or what I mean with to enable them all. Just to get a sense of what this new generation have enabled us to deliver to our different customers. So to take at the very low left down there, we have a residential mover targeting urban residential owners, maybe 200 to 500 square meters. A very basic mover, you would say, more price sensitive. Then we're coming up to maybe 1,500 and then 3,000 to 5,000. And also on the sophistication scale here, it comes more functionality, like connectivity. You would like to be able to divide your lawn into different zones and schedule them individually. You want to have smart home integration and so on. This mover here was released this year. It's the product called Nera. It's the first boundary wire-free mover that we have for the consumer market. So you don't need to dig down this boundary wire anymore. So it's only GPS-based. And then we have this huge mover up there that I work very closely with right now. It's called Seora. It's mainly targeting the professional market, sports and golf and facility management. And as you can see here, we have a 75,000 square meters. Just to give you some examples then, if you look on, okay, what would be the challenges here? We have the smallest one with a sales price approximately 1,000 euros. You have two PCBs and a battery capacity of 45 watt hours. Then when you go up in the middle here, you get a factor of 5. So the price is 5,000, the PCBs is 10, and the battery is a little bit higher. And then you can see the big beast over there. You have a sales price above 30,000 euros. You have more than 15 PCBs, and you have a battery capacity close to 2 kilowatt hours. So as you can imagine, I mean, if you look from the outside, you wouldn't say that this is one platform, but there is a lot of things that we can see that we can benefit of actually keeping together. As I said, we have a one-track software development. We have a lot of infrastructure. We have a simulation where we can simulate different gardens. We have the whole backend and connectivity with firmware over the air. A lot of things that all of these, even if they're targeting very different customers, actually can benefit. And sometimes we get, when you want to start a really big project, you need to go up to the board and argue for a lot of millions. And one of the questions they ask very often, or at least people in the middle there somewhere, ask, okay, how much do you actually reuse? Because we spend a lot of money on the previous product. Secure now that you reuse as much as possible. And then a lot of people start looking into the boom list and say, okay, how many components do we reuse and so on. But to be able to communicate this with platforms internally, we have actually tried to look a little bit wider when it comes to reuse, not only component or software code. So we have, you can say, 4 different categories of reuse, and I will show some examples. But one is obviously the component. I mean, it is beneficial if you can reuse, as in our case, for example, a communication board with cellular, because then you can certify it, you can have higher volume on it and so on. But it's not the only thing. The next one is concept. That's more, okay, now we know how we could do it here. Like I have some example here with the floating cutting system, for example. It's maybe not exactly the same between the products, but we know how to do it. Another one is more platform capability. Like, okay, we have FODA, and we can then reuse that for all of them, no matter how the product looks in that case. And at the end, we shouldn't forget the knowledge, because if we have done something once, it's much easier to do it in a new concept and for a new product, even if it doesn't really look the same. So if we take the history now of the Generation 4 platform, we started off, as I said, with this 4-wheel drive. So here you can see that we have the platform capability of a new software with what everything that means. We have the CON architecture, we had the new connectivity, and we had this firmware over there. This is not an extensive list. It's just some examples where some is actually components that we have, some is more kind of capabilities and concepts. After that, we did a more smaller, where the importance of stability, and because the first one was a high margin, maybe not big volume, but for this one, we really want to secure that, okay, now we want to have a stable software and so on, and that was important for that one. We wanted to have a cheaper collision system that came with that one, and we have this aim, as we call it. This enable us to create zones in the garden and then schedule them individually. And one good thing with having one-track software and one platform is when we did it for this mower, we could easily map that into the previous, even for the customers that actually bought it the year before. They could get new features through FOTA and get kind of more value even after they purchased the product. See, yeah. So the year after that, we did the first boundary wire free mover. And here we have 2 kind of component parts, and EPOS is our RTK solution that we call it EPOS. So it's both the reference station and the EPOS. So as you can see, we inherited a lot of other things, but for that product, the key thing was the boundary wire free. After that, we built this beast. And this is actually the biggest R&D project that ever happened within Husqvarna before. And some people said, well, it's very expensive. And we say, yes, it is expensive, but we would never be able to build this product if we haven't had the capabilities and the concepts and the know-how and the components from the previous models. So even if it was a big, expensive, but very profitable project, we benefited a lot from the other products. And then, as I said, we had this NERA that, from one perspective, you can say we combined all the good things from the others, but we also added a new radar, we added a new combined Bluetooth Wi-Fi solution, and really put focus on serviceability. That's something we learned throughout the other movers here, that, okay, how can we also make it easy for our dealers to find the faults and repair the faults? And as I said, we also have one really, really low cost, or really, it's compared to the big one, a very low cost mover. And here there is more focus on board integration, put everything on more. Then you could say we don't reuse the board, but we reuse design, we reuse the know-how. And one thing here in the platform now is that we have something called late customization. And that is, since we have a lot of different models or product variants, to be able to price differentiate between a 500, a 300, and a 200, for example. And we want to customize that as late as possible in the production, because we don't want to build up too much stock and so on. So that was a concept by very late in the delivery chain, be able to customize what kind of model is this that we need to deliver to the customer. And the future, unfortunately, I will not be able to tell you what's down the road. But I mean, we have cooperation with you guys, and that is for things coming in the future. And if you look at this picture, you could say, well, it's a quite good starting point. We have a lot of good capabilities, know-how, and components that we can reuse for new products. And I'm looking forward to putting them on the market. Obviously, there will be some challenges, but for us, this is a key to be able to very fast and very efficient be able to deliver new products to the new needs that's coming up for the market. Before I open up for questions, I wanted to send 2 questions to you because I know you have your own kind of situation. You're working on different companies and so on. So the first question is, what is the purpose of your platform? Because as I mentioned, the main purpose, as I see it, is that we want to be able to create a lot of different variants for different customer segments. But you maybe have another purpose of thinking in a platform-wise strategy. The other one is, how do you define and describe your platform? I've talked to some of you here, and we said platform, that can mean a lot of different things. And also within our organization, it means very different things. Do you mean mechanically? Because Husqvarna is a very mechanically heavy company. So if you think mechanically platform, everything needs to be able to fit together. And then obviously the smallest mover and the biggest mover is definitely not the same platform. Do you think chipsets, or do you think, whatever? And I think it's important when we talk about reuse, when we talk about platforms, that we have a common understanding on what do we need? So what is the purpose? And what do we mean? Good. That was mine. Question 1. Now, I would say when it comes to software, we are trying, as I said, we have a one track, and we are continuously delivering software. Historically, before we had the FODA, we had one time a year where we could kind of produce with the new software. Today, we could theoretically deliver software maybe if we find something within 6 weeks, we can do the changes, we can verify it and send out to customers. But planning-wise, we want to do releases every half year, approximately. And then we actually, for all these movers that you saw in this picture, we actually let previous customers get the latest releases and the new features. For example, if we take this mover here, this was a boundary wire free 2021, but random. So it just went around, very randomized. With this mover, to be able to really come up to the high capacity requirements that we have, 75,000 at most, we had to go systematically. So this year, we actually released systematic moving on this mover. So a mover now with this hardware, last year it was specified for 5,000. Now you get 5,000 extra for free. So you get 10,000 square meters within 48 hours instead. So that's another example where we actually give the customer more value through the kind of main pipeline of our software development. Yeah. We do a lot of testing, and I mean, since all of these movers are still in production and we deliver new movers, so obviously we do new development on features on these movers also. We try, as many organizations, try to test as early as possible. We have a simulation where all the logical behaviors and stuff we can do in simulation. And then obviously we have a lot of tests also on the field. So yes, it requires obviously a lot of testing. Good question. I think it's two things. One would be that we realize there might be a new technology shift somehow, maybe in the chipset technologies or something like that. Or the other one, I think it's more of, I mean, it's very heavy to carry too big of a backpack. So at some point, maybe you need to make kind of a hard line saying, okay, we need to start over somehow here because it would require too much work to actually support all legacy. Hopefully, it will be more than 8 years from that perspective. But I think that the major thing that would drive a new generation from us would be a technology shift when it comes to chipset, that was it. I think historically we have been our own customers, you could say. I mean, most of the people, at least working in Husqvarna, have their own garden, and we have tested them at home and so on. For professional use, it's a little bit new there, and we try to get out and understand. But obviously, we have an organization doing that. But it is a challenge because you learn a lot of being out there, and you think as a kind of technology geek that you want to solve some of the problems, but when you get out there, you understand, this is the real problem. So we try to get out there as much as possible. I think that's what needs to happen for us, at least. Yeah. The main focus so far has been, cutting the grass. But I didn't mention, but the architecture of this, we call it the Sciora ecosystem, is actually that it's I would say 3 parts in the system. One is the drive unit, then you have the cutting deck, and then you have the charging station. But already today we have 2 variants of this cutting deck. One is for the normal kind of grass, and then we have a low cut specifically for fairways on golf. And you can just imagine what other kind of tools you could add to this drive unit there. Yeah. The robotic organization that I'm part of the strategy there is very clear. It's to be on kind of lawn care. But if you look on Husqvarna as big, we have an autonomous organization that is evaluating different both business case and technologies. We have, for example, had cooperations with Swedavia, where we do autonomous riders, so it's the big movers. We also have some cooperations with Yeti, that is snow plug, I don't know what that is, on airports and so on. My responsibility is not evaluating those kind of opportunities, but as a group, I would say it's definitely on our minds to see how can we extend our know-how and our technologies into other things. But it's for now at least very adjacent to the areas where we are right now.
Should we let him go and take Jesper next?
Yeah.
Was that 50 minutes?
That was good enough. So,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you.